Welcome to the Double Blonde Brokers podcast. With this podcast, our hope is that clients and friends alike can learn something. With each episode, we make light of the complexity of health insurance by offering tips, tricks, vocab lessons, and even sharing stories of our experiences as brokers. New episodes launch every Wednesday.
Well, welcome to the Double Blonde Brokers podcast. I'm Suzanne O'Connor, and this is Emily Keaton. And we're going to come to you today and just give you a little quick overview of the changes to Medicare for 2025, and just to discuss once again annual enrollment. So, Emily, why don't you tell us the dates of open enrollment and we'll lead off from there.
So annual enrollment period is just around the corner, just a few short weeks away. It starts on October 15th and runs through December 7th. Remember that this is a time to make changes to your Medicare for the year of 2025. So we also just want to remind you this is just for Advantage plans and prescription drugs. So you can change Advantage plans at this time if you want to. Or if you've never had an Advantage plan, you could start one if you want to, or change your drug plan. And you want to make sure that you get in those changes by December 7th.
Yes. And don't be fooled if you hear a lot of or overwhelmed with a lot of advertising about it and feeling like you have to make a decision to make a change, because you honestly really don't. If you're happy with your plan, you can keep things rolling just as it was before. Well, I'll start out to tell you just a little bit about something that's changing it this year even more so for everyone's benefit. And it's been passed by the IRA, not to be confused with the IRS. IRA stands for Inflation Reduction Act, and it actually started in 2022. But you know what? When stuff happens in the government, it can take a while, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're finally experiencing the full benefits of it in 2025. So basically in 2022 and 2023, most insulins were capped at $35. That was the first one that they got through. So now we have some even more changes. This is where the full changes come into effect, is in 2025. So Emily, why don't you kick us off today and tell us a little bit about that deductible and those different phases and what that's like for 2025.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that is changing for 2025 is prescription drug coverage, which, like you said, it's changed a little bit in the last year, but it's kind of like majorly different now, with the stages and phases and all those things that we talked about in an episode a few weeks ago. And you can just kind of delete that all out of your brain for the future because it's changing a ton. So, uh, basically for 2025, Part D prescription drug coverage, it still has the first initial phase the same. So that's called the deductible phase. In 2024, that deductible amount that you had to reach before the insurance company or Medicare starts paying for your prescriptions, that was $545 was the drug deductible. And in 2025, that is going to change to $590. It's pretty typical that it goes up a little bit each year. So this isn't anything huge changing, but just know that has gone up a little bit. Remember that in that first deductible phase, you're typically paying the whole cost of most name brand drugs. A lot of the generic drugs, tier 1, tier 2, a lot of the drug plans can waive those sometimes. So you end up paying sometimes nothing, sometimes really low copays in there. So that deductible is not all bad. Now, after that, we go into the initial coverage phase. And this phase is different than it has been in the past. So you've satisfied that deductible. In the past, this would be the phase where you had copays for pretty much everything. Now it's changing to where you are going to pay 25% of the cost of all of your drugs. So insurance pays 75%, you pay 25%. Now, for some drugs, that probably sounds like a bad thing for some of the more expensive ones. But again, this is just a guideline by Medicare. They say that it has to be at least this good. And so each insurance company has in each plan has the choice to still extend those copays from that initial phase to you in that phase as well, um, or kind of make things easier and better for you. So this is where it gets really good, is after that phase, there is no longer a coverage gap. That we've had in the past. Now we go straight to the catastrophic at only $2,000. So as a consumer, if you've spent $2,000 in your true out-of-pocket costs, basically what that means is that you personally have paid those amounts into there. Um, at only 2,000, you get to reach that max out of pocket. So you pay nothing else after $2,000, and in the past that was 8,000. So
Mm.
this is a huge difference. So like I said, you kind of think this is we may be paying more for prescription drugs towards the beginning if you take some of those really expensive name brand drugs, but you're going to satisfy that max out of pocket pretty quickly for a lot of people. So it's kind of, wouldn't you say, Suzanne, it's kind of going back to a model that's similar to traditional insurance under 65, where you've got
Yes.
deductibles up front, but you eventually reach this max out of pocket that we didn't really have before in Medicare.
Yeah, I totally think it's a good way for people to think about it. I've got my deductible, I'm going to pay my co-insurance up until my max out of pocket. And in many cases, though, just like on regular insurance, they'll waive your deductibles and let you have a copay. And they'll do the same thing with the drugs. So some copays will be zero, some a dollar or $4, and that's what kind of confuses people. But knowing that that's max out of pocket, that is awesome. That
Oh,
is
it's huge, and
really
there's no
pretty
more
good.
of this, like, donut hole that people are falling into towards the end of the year. Instead, you're reaching that max out of pocket pretty quick, so
So what will people say anymore? They won't have to be able to talk about the donut hole. So,
I know,
oh my
I
God, I'm in
know.
the donut hole. Okay, well, that's gone now. So, all right. So, another thing that they've done is on the vaccine coverage, they've reduced those to a zero copay. The only caveat is that you would want to make sure that you are going to an in-network provider for the carrier that you've chosen for your Part D or your Medicare Advantage plan. But that's with anything, right? You got to stay in network. Now, doesn't mean that you couldn't go out of network. You can, but then you're going to have to do extra legwork and you would have to submit the bill and have Medicare reimburse you, which I would not recommend that at all,
Yeah,
because that's a paperwork and a government thing. So I would not do that. But
just stay
stay
in
in
network.
just stay in network. And before, for some whatever reason, they didn't cover shingles, and it was like expensive. And people were
Yeah,
like, "Well, why am I paying for this?" Well, so now anything that is required by your state as a preventative shot vaccine is covered at a $0 fee. All right, so now but there are going to be some people that have expensive drugs that are going to be maybe tier 3, 4, and 5 and are going to be having to come up with a deductible first. So there is some extra help. There's a little bit extra help in this program. And Emily, I'm going to let you explain that a little bit and see how, it's probably not going to apply to a lot of people, but
yeah.
for those that really are in a pinch with it, this can be a help to them.
Yeah, so if you remember back to our last episode, or maybe that was two ago, that we talked about the low income subsidy for people who needed help with drugs, you know, most people don't qualify for that. And so, but we're still paying a lot for our drugs in this country. So this is a solution that can really work for anyone. So when you go to the pharmacy, and they tell you this drug's going to cost you $700, most people can't pay that right then and there at the pharmacy. So we now have a prescription payment plan through Medicare that anyone can opt into. You can opt into it at the very beginning of the year. You can opt in halfway through. Um, so you can really do it anytime. And it's for if you're spending more than $600 per month on your prescriptions, you can opt into this program. And basically, what it's going to do is take that $700 bill for prescriptions and divide it up over the remainder of the months that are left in the year. So you can kind of spread out those payments instead of having to pay that hefty bill all at one time. Um, And remember that if you're paying over 600 in prescriptions a month, you're going to reach that max out of pocket pretty quick. So this kind of helps spread out that 2 grand for the year over, the whole year instead of all at one time.
The first
So,
2 months, yeah.
but to sign up for that, people can contact their Part B prescription plan. So, and you do need to do that before you actually go pick up the prescription. They suggest at least 24 hours before to notify them so that they can make sure that you're in that program.
Right. Okay. So that'll be helpful for some people. One thing we wanted to touch on today is about you during this time. Oftentimes people are just overrun with just more advertising for Medicare, right? Pretty soon we'll have all the commercials on TV constantly, like between
Hmm.
the election and the Medicare commercials, you're gonna go crazy listening to all this. But what I want to point out is that if you do receive any phone calls, those are unsolicited that you have not requested, that person is really breaking the CMS regulations, because we are not allowed to contact anyone unless you have allowed us or given us permission to contact you. So just keep that in mind when you answer the phone. If you do, just say, hey, I know that, just to let you know that I know that you are calling me and I have not asked you to call me. So I ask you to stop doing that. So obviously
Yeah.
you want to try to reach out to a broker that does things the right way
Yes.
to help
And
navigate that.
Suzanne, as you say that, I think sometimes people need a little bit of a reminder what time is really even for the annual enrollment period, because I think so many consumers out there, they get a little bit frightened by the fact that there are so many TV commercials, so much coming in the mail to them, so many people calling them.
Mhm.
We get a little bit panicky of like, well, I'm supposed to be doing something, right? I have to do something. And the answer really is no. If you're happy with your Medicare plan and nothing has really changed with your health and your needs, you don't have to do anything. Um, we just always recommend that during this time, you kind of revisit everything, make sure that you're still in the correct plan. And the perfect person to do that is a broker, because they're able to advise on multiple different options, whether it's a supplement or an advantage plan or different prescription drug plans. Really give you all of your options rather than, that TV commercial that only talks about one specific plan that may or may not even be available in your area. So
That's
you
another.
really got to be aware of all that advertising.
Yes. And so, and it's mentioning the changes. So just always remember with this, nothing's really changed with the whatever you had as a supplement, and whatever was covered before is still covered the same way. But sometimes people don't realize that your supplement actually increases generally during the middle of the year sometime. It does not have that annual increase. So just keep that in mind. So that's not going to change in your pricing. The next time we're going to get some more changes, maybe depending whether go for the under 65. We've kind of covered pretty much the over 65 market. And so we'll be coming back to you with some more information soon. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks.
Bye.
If you liked what you heard or learned something new, then feel free to give us a like and a follow. Also, don't be afraid to share us with a friend or write us a review, and you can follow us on all social media platforms. We are on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram as at Double Blonde Brokers. You can also send us an email to doubleblondebrokers@gmail.com if you have any suggestions for future episodes or would like to use us as your brokers. Thanks so much for stopping by. We'll see you next time.